The stock market is dumping, but Bitcoin is pumping. What is going on? Well, we just got some incredibly bullish news for the crypto industry, and in today's video, we'll be covering this as well as what the next potential targets are for Bitcoin. If you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So as per my previous videos, you can see that Bitcoin finally got a pretty significant pump from the range lows. Everyone was bearish, but I remained my bullish stance, and I still think that there could be some upside for Bitcoin. We'll cover that in today's video. But if we zoom out here, just to give you a little bit of an overview. First of all, you can see that after getting rejected, forming lower highs at the top of this range, Bitcoin came down, and when we broke below this level, everyone got very bearish. The reason being, we broke the range. However, as I showed you in my previous videos, we held the previous all-time high as support right around $112,000. And historically, when we hold these previous all-time highs as support, you can see that we get significant bounces afterwards as per that 74K low that we held when we have the tariff news. Now, back to this chart, you can see that another setup occurred, and that was the Monday low to Monday high. I told you on the channel that these are typically very good trade setups. And so, as Bitcoin broke down here, if we were to reclaim that Monday low, it would have been an excellent long setup, as I discussed in my previous videos. And you can see that we pumped right past from Monday low all the way up to Monday high, and now we actually just got an aggressive wick to the downside on the hourly time frame, wiping out a lot of late longers. And you can see here that we are trying to hold Monday's high as support before potential continued upside. Now, I also shared my trade on the channel, and we've been covering this at length, but right now it's currently sitting at around $33,000 in profits, and I've been giving you a lot of updates within my community. I actually already took some profits on this trade as per my last video. The reason being 106K was a high liquidity zone that I really wanted to secure some profits on. That being said, what do I think could be next for Bitcoin? Because we got in from way lower levels. Now, if you were to look to long this, ultimately, you would have wanted to long upon proof of Monday's high as support. We also gave you the opportunity to join in on a long at around Monday's low, but right now, you can see that Bitcoin is just consolidated. The other thing we need to address here is that stocks are actually dumping. And so I want you to be a little bit cautious. This is not the area to go ahead and FOMO. The reason being, we hear this narrative over and over again. Whenever stocks dump and Bitcoin holds strong or even pumps, as well as the rest of the crypto market, that is when every single influencer will call for the decoupling. Naturally, this is not the case, and we saw this ahead of the previous FOMC where the stock market was actually dumping, Bitcoin was actually pumping, and then we got a drastic dump afterwards. So while I do think that Bitcoin can move higher from here, you should exercise a little bit of caution. Make sure that you're paying attention to the market because a lot can change within a matter of hours. Now, what I want you to pay attention to here for the next potential level for Bitcoin, if I zoom out on this chart, is actually all the way up here to around 117.8K. The reason why this level is very, very important is because it coincides with, number one, the point of control of this range. As you can see, we had the most volume right around this level, and number two, the top of this range. If we get a confirmed breakout and we hold this level as support, at that point, I do think we could be seeing Bitcoin back to $120,000. That being said, I've been taking profits on the way up to manage my risk properly. And by the way, if you want to know exactly how I'm playing this market, you do have that first link in my description down below, which brings you to my free Telegram community. You DM me the word premium, and I would be happy to onboard you into my free group where I navigate the market and I share with you my exact trade setups as well as how I'm rotating between different cryptocurrencies. So if that interests you, that is the first link in my description down below. So back to Bitcoin here, what I would like to see is holding this level as support. First of all, we need to make it above there because if we start failing back below Monday's high, then at that point, this could find us stuck in the middle of this range once more. But ultimately, because of what we've been talking about on the channel at length, we have the liquidity maps. there is still a ton of liquidity right around $120,000. But I want you to also be aware of this. If we go on the 7-day time frame, a lot more longs entered the market, which is expected because we got a pump from $112,000 to almost $117,000 as I'm recording this video. This is the 7-day time frame, but on the 30-day time frame here, way more shorts in the market still, which to me, someone that's going long, this is a very, very positive sign. Now, I do think that Bitcoin could still range around. We cannot ignore the fact that maybe we get to the top of this range and then we come back down and then we continue to chop around in this range, fooling a lot of traders. Maybe as we saw down here, we get another fake out, grabbing the liquidity to $120,000. Everyone is expecting a massive pump to a brand new all-time high, and then we come right back down. The market has a way of making things extremely brutal, which is why the best risk to rewards, in my opinion, are found at the bottom of these established ranges, which is why I remain bullish right around these levels. So, what else is there to cover? Because yes, stocks are down. Maybe we'll see a delayed reaction with crypto, but one thing is for sure, we held the previous all-time high support, and ETH is also following and actually leading the market. As we see, Ethereum is also having a very strong day. We are now just $200 to the 4K milestone. Let's see if we can break it or if we're going to go ahead and get rejected. But one thing you also need to consider here is that the Bitcoin and Ethereum dominance chart just continues to soar, which is exactly why most of my spot portfolio, as I've shared several times, is between Ethereum and Bitcoin. In my opinion, given the current monetary policy, this is the best way to play the market. Ethereum gives you exposure to the altcoin market, which, as we've seen, they are continuing to bleed against Ethereum, and we also have Bitcoin, which is, of course, the king of the asset class. So if I want exposure to alts, I have ETH. If I want exposure to the overall market, I hold Bitcoin. And that's exactly what I've been doing in my spot portfolio. Now, I also wanted to show you this piece of news because the United States initial jobless claims came out with the actual number at 226,000, the expected at 221,000, and the previous at 219,000. So this is continuing to crawl up. Now, what does this mean? Odds of a rate cut continue to increase going into September. And you can see now that there's over a 91% chance that we get rate cuts into September. Something, again, that you need to be a little bit cautious about. The market can rally into these rate cuts, perhaps into FOMC, but maybe we get a pullback afterwards because ultimately this is what everyone has been waiting for. And now there's a potential that we get far more than one rate cut this year. Let's see what happens, but this is what everyone has been waiting for. So make sure that you don't get wrecked by the market as this news already starts to get priced in. Now, I want you to also pay attention to the Trump team hiring a new Fed chair. Now, we know that Jerome Powell's term ends next year, and we can see that Waller is emerging as the favorite for the Fed chair amongst the Trump team. The reason being, Trump likes his desire for rate cuts based on forecasts. And the next thing I need to show you, which is extremely bullish for this market right now, Coinbase Premium is back. This is historically very bullish, plus the fact that we have some more and more emerging topics. For example, Trump-linked crypto miner is now going to be getting an investment from the Winklevoss twins. So this is also huge. Not a lot of people are talking about this, but we do have the two most important pieces of news at the end of this video, which is, first of all, Trump is soon to sign an executive order allowing 401ks to allocate into digital assets. Here are some assumptions, which I don't necessarily agree with these assumptions, but you can imagine how much this could bring the market up. 401ks represent 8 to 10 trillion in assets under management, assuming that 30 to 50% of 401ks allocate to Bitcoin, which I don't think would be the case, but we could see something like 20% given how much attention Bitcoin has got over the past couple of years. Assume allocation ranges from 1 to 4%. This would equate to around 27 to 180 billion in potential inflows into Bitcoin, which is arguably much more significant than the ETFs themselves. And so, for context, this is going to dwarf the inflows from the Bitcoin treasury companies as well, because we're seeing that more and more Bitcoin treasury companies are continuing to add Bitcoin to their balance sheets. Now, something else which is extremely exciting, which I'm not seeing many people talk about because this has been covered a lot, is the fact that the Fed just published a report exploring the use of gold revaluation gains to fund a strategic Bitcoin reserve, citing legislation from, of course, Senator Cynthia Lummis. Bitcoin is officially on the Fed's radar. Very, very interesting to see this because we know that they want to accumulate Bitcoin, but the question always was, how do you do so without imposing anything on the taxpayers? And so this could be a potential way for them to start to establish that strategic Bitcoin reserve on their way to accumulate 1 million Bitcoins. And as we wrap up this video, remember, I also have some fantastic bonuses for you. First of all, we have Bluffin. If you deposit this amount of capital, you can earn VIP 1 or 2. Of course, this campaign is a little bit more for whales, but honestly, when you get reduced trading fees, if you're an active trader, I would highly recommend joining this campaign. That is, of course, the second link in my description down below as per usual. And we also have Phoenix where you can deposit and trade to earn Solana and $1,000 in cashback, which is in the description down below as well. So you have those exchanges. And of course, I also have Weeks for those of you that have been following the channel for a while, another solid exchange. And actually, this is where I currently have my Bitcoin trade open. I will make sure to keep you updated as I continue to take profits on this trade, but ultimately the levels are there. And I really like what we're seeing here because when we get these long wicks to the downside, typically it does suggest that Bitcoin has at least another little leg higher before it comes back down into the range. And what I mean by this is if I zoom out on the 12-hour time frame, assuming that we get a candle close like this, which is of course a little bit of a red candle, to me, this just means continuation. Every single time we get a long wick to the downside, we get a nice big pump afterwards. Now, of course, this isn't guaranteed, but right now things are looking good for at least a retest of the top of this range, which is right around 117.8K. Let's see what happens here. I will definitely be skimming some profits around this area, and maybe we end up coming back down, but I'm still hoping, honestly, that we can go back and grab that liquidity all the way up to around the 120K region, which would be a strong take profit point. Remember, if you want to trade with me, you have all of the links in the description down below. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Overall, things are looking very, very positive, but make sure that you're careful going into these rate cuts and going into FOMC, which is next week. Let's see what happens. Will Bitcoin consolidate in this range, or are we immediately going to move higher since we bounce from the range lows? That is a topic that we will be monitoring in the next few videos.